Hello everybody and welcome to the ultimate guide to cars in Create Aeronautics. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a mobile workshop that you can drag around your Create mod world. We're going to see how to make a really good all-terrain car, an incredibly efficient tunnel bore, an automatic tree harvester, a very simple race car, and of course all the tools you're going to need to build whatever car you can dream up for your world. So first things first, we need to turn our regular blocks into simulated contraptions that we can actually mess around with in survival. So that's done with the physics assembler. So when you place this down, you can hold right click, slide it up, and it turns an object into a physics object. So we turned this block into a physics object that we can actually move around our world and, do stuff with, and it'll interact with the other blocks that it hits. Now, let's say you want to build your car first and then turn it into a physics object. The way you want to do this is actually use the honey glue added by Aeronautics. To use this, all you do is right click on one corner, right click on another corner, and then it'll form a bounding box, in which case you can assemble everything in that bounding box using your assembler. You can see now we've assembled this whole car at one time instead of having to build off of the one block. You can then disassemble it if you want by holding right click on your assembler, sliding it down, and that disassembles your contraption. Now the honey glue allows you to do two really cool things alongside just gluing something together. First, if you hold Alt, you can actually select a point mid-air. So we can select out here, and then we can select like over here holding Alt, and select a larger area. So if our contraption had weird shapes, we could very easily select the bounding box we want. The other thing it does is if you hold Control, face one of these directions, you can actually scroll with your scroll wheel to make your bounding box larger or smaller depending on what you need. So we can actually shrink this right in to our car, so we're not like connecting stuff that we don't intend to, and we just want to select exactly the area where our car is. And of course, with it selected, you can then assemble it together and you have your assembled car. Now, to make your car actually move, you can of course use mechanical bearings from default Create. If you turn them on a physics contraption, they will actually turn and they'll interact with the world. So you can see we can very easily make a little car that can go forward in our world, and we could make this more advanced using different components to make the bearings turn and do cool stuff. However, this really isn't the way we want to do it, because with Create Offroad, we actually have wheels added into the mod. So Offroad is essentially an add-on to Create Simulated that's bundled with Create Aeronautics and everything at the moment, and it adds these wheel mounts and tires that actually work as wheels in your world. So you can see we can very easily build a car that can actually drive around. And these work really quite simply. The wheel mounts have a shaft on the back, or if I go ahead and power it up, you see our wheel actually turns based on the input we're giving it. So you can see it's going kind of slow. If I were to speed this motor up, you see the wheel starts moving quicker, and that will actually cause your contraption to move quicker. The other thing the wheel mount does is it has these two little red arrows inside here. And if I turn a lever, you'll see that the arrow will turn on and our wheel will actually turn in that direction. So we can actually control the direction our wheel is going and control a car based on a redstone input. And a super cool feature here is depending on the amount of redstone input you give it, it'll turn a different amount. So if you provide a really low input, you can see it's turning just a little bit. Higher input will turn it more. So you can get a real fine-tuned control to turn your wheel exactly how you want. So you can either have a system where like it slowly ramps up to do the turn, and it doesn't just like immediately turn to 45 degrees. Or you can have like a system where, let's say you only ever want to turn a certain degrees. You can only provide a redstone signal to that power and only ever turn to like 11 or 10, whatever you think is ideal for your specific contraption. Now, the other feature you'll notice with the wheel mount is it has this little slider here for suspension strength. By default, this is set to 10. So if I were to lift this contraption up and drop it, you see that it's quite bouncy. Now, this is really nice for most contraptions, but you might want to fine tune this depending on what you're doing. So if I were to like lower this down all the way to 0, which is basically lowering the amount of suspension we're getting, you see that the bounciness actually increases. So we're getting less suspension, which means it's more bouncy, more springy, and our contraption is allowed to dip further down amongst the wheels as we're kind of like hitting bumps or landing or kind of whatever your contraption is going to be doing. On the flip side, if I were to max out our suspension at 180, if I were to lift this contraption up and drop it again, you see that it has no suspension. It'll just kind of fall down and hit the ground, and it won't be bouncy like it was before. And the last feature that a wheel mount has is at the top, if you apply a redstone signal, it applies a brake to your mount. And just like the side for turning, you can also determine the strength of your brake by applying a different redstone strength. With a low redstone strength only braking a little bit, and a full redstone strength completely stopping your wheel from turning. Now to place your tires on your wheel mount, all you gotta do is just right click on the wheel mount, which places your tire. You can't place tires in the world, they must be placed on a wheel mount. And to remove them, all you do is use a shear, which picks the tire back up. Now there are 4 different sizes of tire. We have the small tire, the regular tire, the large tire, and then the monstrous tire. With our monstrous tire being over 4 blocks tall, which is crazy, large tire being a little over 2 blocks, regular tire being pretty much exactly 2 blocks, and the small tire being about a block and a half tall. And along with all of the regular tires, we also get some fun add-ons. You can use large water wheels, you can use flywheels, you can use crushing wheels, you can use regular water wheels, and you can even use the rock cutting wheels added by Create Offroad. And these work the same way as the regular wheels. You just take your item, right click it on the wheel mount, and it'll place down whatever wheel you pick for your contraption. Now, really, for most contraptions, you're going to be using your wheel mounts and your tires, but there are two other kind of wheel adjacent things that we can go over. First is if you use belts from Create, they actually work as tank treads, which is super cool. They're not very efficient, but they definitely have their use cases, which we will be talking about. And then finally, there's a number of blocks in Aeronautics that are slippery. So blue ice and grindstones are my examples here. If I were to just move this contraption, you see that they actually slide on the ground. So you could definitely use those as like some kind of trailer or something. And definitely it is good to know that there are just like slippery blocks that can be used in your contraptions while you're building a car. Now, for actually controlling your wheel mount, I would highly recommend using portable engines on your machine. So these are added by Simulated, and the way they work is you can fuel them up by using coal or blaze cakes or really anything that burns, and they provide rotational input out the back. And this is a really convenient one block solution to powering up your components. So for instance, if I power this up, you see that it'll actually go and it'll power up this wheel. Now, what you'll notice is it's not actually powering it, and that's because we have a control piece here, which is our directional gear shift. And the gear shift works by applying power to one of two sides. So if you apply it to one side, it'll spin one way. If you apply it to the other side, it'll spin the other way. And if you provide power to both sides, it won't spin either. So you can very easily control forward and back movement by doing this. So you see, if I hook this up to our wheel here, we can move forward. Or if I turn the other one, we can then move backwards. And if we wanted to, I could use redstone links to hook this up. By placing a redstone link on each side, and then we're going to place a lever as our signal. We'll place one at the top for one side, one at the bottom for the other, and then shift right click to turn them into receiving mode. I can then come over here and grab a linked controller, which can be placed in a lectern. And then I just right click on our link, and then I press what I want it set to. So set one to W and the other to S. So now if I right click on my controller and hold W, our wheel spins forward, and if I hold S, it spins backwards. So that's how we very easily control our forward and backwards motion of our contraption. And we do something very similar to left and right. So if I just throw a redstone link on the side of a wheel mount, give it a frequency, shift right click it to turn it on, and then we'll set one to one side, one to the other, so one's A and one's D. I can now control this, A and D, to turn our contraptions. We go forward, we can turn right, and we can turn left. Now, our right and left are backwards to how we would want it. So if I want to modify this, I can shift right click on our controller, open up this menu, where I can then unbind them here, rebind them in the other direction, and now our A key turns it left and our D key turns it right. So that's how you'd set up a full control system for your car. Since this wheel is now completely controllable and would be able to very easily move a car around our world. Now, if you have a car with other features, the linked typewriter is a really useful tool. So in here, if you shift right click, you have your entire keyboard available to set your signal. So we can go into W and set that to our going forward. We can go into S to set that as going back. We could also do things like if we wanted H to do something, we could throw a frequency in H and that would activate H. Now what's really neat is we're not just locked to these keys. If I go into this menu here, I can come in here and click add, and this can be any key. So for instance, I can use like my numpad, or if I had a mouse with extra buttons, I could use that. And you can set a frequency for those two as well. So now when I press my keypad 7, you'll see it's activating something. So we can use that to activate different features of a vehicle if we wanted to. And using those basic tools, we can very easily set up a very basic car that works actually really quite well. So in the back here, I have a portable engine, which I can power up, then goes into a gearbox and into our directional gear shift, where I have forward and back set up, then goes into another gearbox, and then into a series of encased chain drives right under here, which goes into my front wheel mounts. Now I could make this back wheel drive as well, but I found a front wheel drive car actually works quite well. Now on the side of each of these wheel mounts, I have our redstone links that control our left and right movement. So if I hop in this chair, I can come in here and we can go forward, back, and left and right. Now, a really important thing to note once you've actually built your first car, you can of course go into F5 to view the rear view of your car. If you press F5 again, you enter this contraption camera. Now why this is useful is you can actually zoom in and out. Now, where it does have issues, especially with cars, is if you go up at an angle, our contraption camera is actually going to turn with our contraption. So it's basically keeping itself level with the contraption, which for a car is not really going to be what we want. But if you press F5 again, we enter the unlocked contraption camera. And this basically keeps it locked to the world. So you can see as our car moves and is starting to like turn and go up blocks at weird angles, our contraption camera actually stays stable. And you can see here, I've actually built a really nice little road, and while this car isn't necessarily very fast, it actually works really well to drive around on this little road, and is honestly really quite easy to build and very easily an early game contraption that you can make. And of course, it can back up and it can turn, and it all works really nicely. Now, before I dig into some of the specific contraptions I've created, I do want to talk about some mechanics that are important to know when designing your car. First, wheel size does not matter at all for speed. So I have all these cars here, one with every single wheel type, and you see that they all move at the exact same speed, even though they all have different wheel speeds. So as long as your RPMs are the same, your wheels are going to go at the same exact speed. What will slow you down, however, is weight. If I were to go ahead and weight this car in the back up a lot, you'll notice that it's going to move a lot slower than our other cars. So while the actual wheel size doesn't matter, the amount of weight you build in your car is very important. The less weight you have, the faster your car will move. And you can actually tell the weight of the different blocks you can use to build. So if you actually put goggles on from Create and you hover over a block in your inventory, you'll see its weight. So stuff like logs is 0.5 kpg, so those are your light section. Then you have the super light series of blocks, so like your slabs, your stairs, your fences, those are only 0.25 kpg. And then you have some weightless stuff, so like buttons and pressure plates weigh 0. There are a lot of blocks that don't show the weight because they're essentially the normal weight of 1. And then we have some heavy stuff, so like your stones that weigh 2. And then there's the super heavy category, which is mostly like your ore blocks that weigh 4 kpg. Now, my biggest tip for actually designing a light car is you want to decorate with kind of whatever you want. You don't want to be locked down to stuff that's super light. So a really useful tip is that copycat panels and copycat steps are in that super light category. So by placing these down, you can decorate it with whatever you want. As an example, I can take this oxidized cut copper and I can put it inside of the copycat panel and it still weighs 0.25 kpg, even though it's in the normal category where it should weigh 1. So I can essentially get 4 blocks to decorate my car with while still only weighing 1 unit. Now, where your different size wheels really do come in handy is doing stuff like going off-roading. So you can see here with our smallest wheels, it's hard to even get up this 1 block ramp. I can do it, but it is a little difficult. But if I just go ahead and throw some bigger wheels on here, it'll navigate Minecraft terrain a lot easier. So you can see, even though this is a really bumpy area, our car is still able to very easily navigate it and make its way around. Now, an interesting quirk of the way the wheels work is the amount of torque you get out of wheel, so how easily it gets up a hill is actually tied to your RPMs as well as the speed. So by speeding up our motor here, I can not only go faster, but it also helps with getting up inclines. So you can see we're immediately going a lot faster. And at a low RPM, we have trouble getting up this hill. So we have this hill built out here. You see it gets to like the stair section and it's going to kind of stall out and it almost makes it up to the block section, but it doesn't work. And that's because the torque we're getting is tied to those RPMs. So if I were to actually just speed it up, we can actually get up this hill a lot nicer. So you see we easily cruise, and even if we slow down, like it's not just the speed, it really is generating more torque. So it's easily able to get up the 1 block, and actually it's even able to get up this 2 block tall section and very easily drive up to the top of our ramp. So the first car I wanted to talk about is something that can very easily navigate a roadway like I've created here. So essentially what I've done for most of these designs is I've just kind of created the bones of a car. You can definitely decorate this, you can put chests on it, you can do anything with it, because remember, this is a create simulated contraption, which means doing stuff like doors actually works on it. You can also have chests, create components, whatever you want to put on your car, you can put on your car. So if I wanted to, I could just come in the back here, throw a chest, and now I have a trunk built into my car. And for this car, it's very similar to our very first kind of basic car. However, I did make a few changes. The first thing is I added a brake system, so that way you can press a button to brake your car. The second thing is I sped it up quite a lot. So here I have my portable engine and I'm actually using blaze cakes to power it, which already doubles our speed. And then I have a large cog coming off of that powering a small cog, which doubles our speed again. So this car is essentially 4 times faster than our normal car, which means it gets around pretty dang quick. So driving around here, you see it's a lot faster. And this works even better for our little roadway here. You can see we can very easily zip along the path, and it's fantastic for driving on roads. I also have the brake, so if there's like a real sharp turn coming up, I can like press on that brake, stop my contraption, and it's great. It's so nice to be able to drive around with your car like this. And honestly, a car on a road is probably one of the quickest ways to actually get around and create aeronautics. While planes and airships work great, you have to worry about landing them and taking off, and there's a little more nuance to it, where realistically, this is a very simple vehicle, and it works very well and is very easy to control, especially when you have a roadway, and you can just kind of stop wherever you are, get off, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about landing it or picking it up, and yeah, it works so nicely. So we're gonna get all the way around our track real quick. And we are all the way back around, and it was probably only about a minute to get all the way around this track, which is pretty large. If we go all the way up here, you can see that our track kind of goes all the way along this really big peninsula, and we ripped around it real quick. Now, I do want to take a small detour and talk about how I actually built this roadway, because I actually made a special car in order to help me out with this. So my first step to building the roadway was to clear trees, and I actually built this custom tree chopper car with a little set of saws in the front where I could just kind of go in and easily clear a bunch of trees all at once. So I could just kind of come through, raise it up and down depending on what I need, and just clear space for the roadway. What you will notice is there are some major differences between this and the other cars I've shown off so far. The first and honestly most obvious is probably my two-wheel turning system. So I have outside wheels both turning, and what this does is it essentially allows us to almost like turn on the spots. When we're turning, we turn a lot sharper than if it was just the front wheels turning. The other thing we're doing is we're doing a four-wheel powered drive. So as we're going through like just kind of random Minecraft terrain, it's able to kind of keep up with it. And if like our front wheels are up off the ground, our back wheels and middle wheels can keep us going. And I also added in those middle wheels. Those middle wheels really are useful for this machine in particular, because a lot of times you get kind of like stuck up on these logs, and the middle wheels help kind of keep you stable and keep you moving. And then for the tree chopping mechanism, it's real simple. We just have a swivel bearing, which we are powering through, and then we power up our saws to actually chop down the trees. And then over here, we have a cog hooked up to another one of those directional gear shifts, where if you press space, it lifts it up, and then a shift lifts it down by turning this cog. And this thing worked so nice for clearing a nice big path through the woods, so that way we can actually place down our track. And to make this work, I actually used trains from the Create mod in order to actually build out our roadway. So the first train I made was one that had a series of drills at the bottom to essentially clear the bottom block. So that way we can go in and place down whatever roadway block we want to use. And then the second train, which followed along, was a large series of drills to basically clear anything out in the land above it. And then a series of mechanical rollers, which cleared the blocks immediately at the track level. And then also placed down the gray concrete powder automatically. So we very easily built out the base of the road, and then all I had to do was come in, clean up anything it missed, and then place down these slabs to kind of add your ramp, so that way it's a smoother transition. And I did do it in creative, but in survival, it would not take long to build a really nice roadway by just first laying down some rail and then using contraptions similar to these to actually build up the road base. And while we're kind of talking about useful contraptions, I do want to stop and talk about our tank treads and also the rock cutting wheel added by Offroad. So belts from Create actually work as tank treads in the mod. So if I were to go ahead and power this guy up, lay it down, jump into here, we can actually very easily control this contraption, drive it forward, do stuff like turn it, and it actually works pretty nicely for a very specific use case. Now, the reason I say specific use case is the tank treads cannot actually go up blocks. So even here, where we have just this like half block surface, we cannot go up it. The main use case I see for this is to do something like create a mining machine. Now, to actually control tank treads, you usually want to do it a little differently than regular wheels. So I have the typewriter set up where I have Q set to one side and E set to the other, and then I have the reverse set up to A and D. So I can press Q and E to go forward, or A and D to go back, or what's really nice is I can turn on the spot by pressing either Q and D to turn right, or A and E to turn left. So tank treads are really nice for like doing very precise maneuvering of your contraption, even though you do move kind of slow and you can't go up or down blocks. Now, where something like this would come in useful is, like I said, a mining machine. So if I place down a bore head bearing with power from the side, and then I were to like place some andesite casings here like so, and these don't have to be andesite casings, that's just what I'm using, and I place down these rock cutting wheels, this machine is actually going to basically cut out an area of space around these wheels. So by first placing down inventory in our contraption, gluing it together, and then we're powering the bore head bearing from the side, I can right click it, which will then turn it on and it will work as a bore. So if I hop back in here and I head towards this wall here, our contraption will actually start cutting into our wall. And it actually cuts like an area around the bore heads, so you can very easily create a mining contraption that would then mine out a section. And we want it maybe a bit wider to actually fit our contraption into the hole. So you can see we can very easily just start digging out a tunnel. And with our tank treads, we can kind of keep at that same level and keep our machine really stable and have like a fine-tuned control of our contraption. So you can see we can come in at this angle very easily and kind of start ripping through the wall with kind of no problem. And the nice thing about the bore head bearing is if we want to get the materials out of there, any kind of like funnel or other crate contraption can pull items directly out of it from like the side of the bore head bearing. So we can create a contraption that has like an excess of storage out here and a bore head on front that basically mines out a tunnel. Now, the speed of your bore head bearing is controlled by the speed you turn it. So I did double the speed here and actually double the bore heads because I really wanted to see this thing work. So now I should be able to drive this forward and it should mine out all the blocks in front of the contraption. And we can just very easily build a tunnel. Or if it was like underground, we could like very easily mine out for lots of ores and break lots of blocks really quickly. So bore heads and treads, I think, is a fantastic design and should work really nicely. Now, while driving on roads is great, it does require a lot more infrastructure to build up to actually build the roads, and a good amount of cars will just want to be driven around regular Minecraft terrain. So I've got our little test car here, and I'm going to kind of talk about some of the things to consider to actually drive around regular Minecraft blocks. So the first thing is really going to be that speed. So because speed is tied to not only how fast your car moves, but also to torque, by giving your car more speed, it's going to be able to handle all of the terrain a lot easier. The second thing is going to be the size of the wheels. With these small wheels, it does work, but it is possible to get caught up on stuff, and the larger wheels are going to handle the terrain better. And then the last thing is going to be tipping over. Now this car isn't too bad. You know, it's going to be kind of hard to tip this over. That's because it has a pretty low center of mass. Now, if I were to decorate this and I had a bunch of blocks above it, it might tip over a whole lot easier. So keeping your center of mass low is really critical. Now, there are two tricks to actually kind of counteract the center of mass problem. The first is if you take windmill sails and place them upside down, they will actually help automatically stabilize your car. Now the reason for this is they basically provide a force kind of perpendicular to the sail. So if you start flipping, the windmill sails will kind of stick you back down to the ground, and they work really nice to kind of just add to your car. So for our little off-road vehicle we're building here, I might just kind of like add them in the back here as a little spoiler to kind of keep our car from flipping. I've also upgraded to our large wheels here, and then doubled the speed by using a blaze cake in our engine instead of regular coal. And with just those small changes, this thing navigates the Minecraft terrain a lot easier. Now, you will notice one other thing I did, and that's a fan at the front, which is actually pushing our car back down into the ground. Now, this is two really important things. First, it keeps us at the ground, which kind of helps keep our wheels turning on the ground, which is going to help our car move faster. But it's also going to allow us to kind of go up these hills easier as it's kind of pushing the car down in that direction. So now that I have a pretty simple car with all these features, I'm going to take them and upgrade it and try to kind of build what I think is the ultimate off-road car base that you can use and kind of build whatever contraption you want on top of it. So you see it right there, we would have flipped over, but because of our wings and because of the propeller at the top, we very easily stabilize our car. And here it is, a very good car base. So the way this works, I went with our monster wheels to give us the best chance at kind of tackling the Minecraft terrain. I also have this set up for 4-wheel drive, which is going to tackle that terrain really nicely. I'm doing what we did with our fast car and have supercharged engines that are then doubled to speed it up real nice. And then I also have our propellers, which are going to kind of help keep the car stuck to the ground. And then a small set of windmill sails to kind of keep it from flipping over. And jumping in our seat here, we can control this car really easily, and it handles regular Minecraft terrain really well. And what I found was kind of insane is we have this really steep cliff here that I honestly, when I started this video, thought was insurmountable. However, this car is actually able to handle it and drive all the way up this nearly 90-degree cliff. So you can actually build a car that handles almost all Minecraft terrain with no problem. So we can very easily rip around here. And you can see that it keeps itself upright as well. Now, falling down this cliff, it might tip over. However, with those sails on there, we actually are able to keep ourselves mostly upright and actually completely upright. Look at that. So this is a fantastic wheelbase that you will find linked down in the description along with some of my other cars if you want to check them out, modify them, and try them out in your world. And finally, putting it all together, I have what I think is a really nice workshop car. So this has an entire Create Mod workshop built into it, and I did things mostly the same as the other contraptions. However, there is one drive system change that I did make, and that's implementing an analog transmission. So the way this works is you have a cog and a shaft built into the transmission, and if you power the cog and give it a redstone signal, the shaft doubles the speed. And it's based on the actual input you give it. So you can see as I speed this up, our speed on our shaft here is going to increase. And so this was just kind of acting as a way to automatically control the speed of our car. So I can come in the back here, speed it up, slow it down, depending on what I'm doing with the car. And coming inside here, we see that we have a full working Create Mod workshop. So I've got our mixer, I've got a press with a basin. Over here, I've got our different smelting and washing setups, got a set of furnaces, and then in the front here, I have a few chests for storage, a little toolbox, and then even a bed. And then, of course, I have our seats up front, and then on top, I also threw some seats, so we can set up on top of the contraption if we want. And then to stabilize it, you can see that on the bottom, I have some netherite blocks, which you could swap out for iron blocks or coal blocks. I just like the look of the netherite. And then at the top, we have a series of sails, which help kind of keep it from flying over. And then for our wheelbase, I went with a 4-wheel turn design with the monster wheels, so we can very easily kind of turn around Minecraft terrain and be able to control the machine quite nicely. And this thing really does control pretty nice. It's a really cool way to kind of drag around your whole workshop, and you could even upgrade this to be like a full-on mobile base. Now, I'm not comfortable classifying this as a base. It really is just a workshop. You would definitely need more chests, more storage, more decoration if you're actually building a mobile base, but this gives you a really good idea of how to make that happen. You can see our center wheels aren't turning because they're basically just kind of keeping the center off the ground as we're driving around. That's going to do it for today's video. I know it's a little bit of a shorter one compared to my ultimate guide and my planes video. However, cars are relatively simple, and I really wanted to just kind of present you guys the tools to build whatever cars you want. I know my list of initial cars was super long, and I really had to cut it down to what I thought was the essentials because there's so much you can do with your wheelbases and kind of building out cars. But with that, don't forget to go check out my video on planes and my ultimate guide to create aeronautics to see every single block and item in the mod, and make sure you subscribe because we are going to be covering airships next. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.